State of Elyia Q4 2022 update released on the 12th of January 2023. I'm obviously super late to this one, didn't have a PC when it came out, but people have been messaging me, leaving comments, when's the Chronicles of Elyria update coming out? So here you go. It's a long text post, but obviously not as long as the entire saga of Chronicles of Elyria, which if you're not familiar, was an MMO. They raised $8-point-something million across Kickstarter and then their own website, and then delivered nothing the entire time. It was many years of development, and then people took them to court with a class action lawsuit, which failed. They tried to take Exola, which was the payment vendor that Chronicles of Elyria were using, to court. I think that's in arbitration currently, but I'm not 100% sure where we're at with that one. But essentially, obviously my read on this is this guy basically was making an MMO, was incompetent, didn't do a real good job, and then everything went bad, couldn't deliver the product. People then got upset, we want our money back, we think this is a scam, did the lawsuit. During the lawsuit, Caspian, who's the lead guy of Chronicles of Elyria, came out and said, I'm still making the game, but first I'm going to make a game that nobody ever asked for, that nobody wants, called Kingdoms of Elyria, which is like a top-down, what would we even call it? Shit. It looks awful. It's terrible. It's not an MMO. He said he was going to make that with no employees, no funds. Well, he had one employee, a guy called Snipe Hunter, like we're going back to 2003 FPS games or something. But yeah, he had Snipe Hunter. They had no money, no fans, nothing. So what are they saying now after the lawsuit's ended? Because this is the first update since that lawsuit concluded. So if he is running away and not doing anything, if he doesn't plan to actually, deliver on anything and he was just using that as a facade, we're going to find out here, I guess. So greetings, Illyrians. With 2022 having ended and it is now being the second week of the new year, it's time for our last quarterly update, State of Elyria developer blog of 2022 and our first monthly developer blog of 2023. To begin, let me say that some years should be put in the rear view mirror as quickly as you can, with as few glances back as possible. With mounting legal fees, shrinking staff, and me being pulled away from engineering for 60+% of the year to focus on funding the studio, 2022 was one such year. Fortunately, 2023 has a lot of great things going for it, so let's spend a little bit of time looking back on 2022, and then we can turn our attention forward to 2023. So, he spent most of his year trying to raise money, so we'll see whether he's raised any money, because as far as I'm aware, they never did, other than from the public. And of course, if you couldn't raise money while people thought you had a game being made and you had 20 employees, how are you going to raise it when everyone thinks you don't have a game and you have no employees? But we'll see. Looking back, it's customary in the first blog post in the new year to look back at the previous year as a whole, but rather than relisting everything discussed in the previous 3 quarterly updates, I'm instead going to touch on the most significant elements of each quarter and then provide links for further reading. We don't super need to go in depth here. The most productive quarter was Q1. I had over 80 check-ins that quarter, which consisted of forward progress. In addition to porting over many of our already implemented gameplay mechanics for use in KOE, KOE being the top-down, terrible management game that looked awful, that was built in a completely different engine to the MMO, and consequently COE. There also forward progress made on the engineering of the domain settlement land management mechanics of COE. Man, it's been a long time since I've heard those words. So here's what they did. With quarter 2, in a blog post, we showed a video of all different production chains that had been completed, as well as a discussion what that meant and how they're used. You can also see screenshots of the art assets that were created during Q2 in support of those production chains. So this was the update where they just had, 7 kilobyte text files that he was showing, that he had 100 of, that were how do you make this thing? And then it was just a flow chart, and then there was just some images of plants, which, if you've given somebody $8 million and 7 years later they're showing you flow charts of 15 words and pictures of plants, what are we fucking doing here? What are we doing? So as a quick reminder, COE is a big game, doesn't exist. My vision of Chronicles of Elyria is a role-playing game where you are part of an epic, evolving storyline where every decision you make can have a meaningful impact on the world around you. I'd love an MMO like that. It's just a shame that this won't be it. You can fill your days adventuring, sieging, farming, or even governing a settlement, country, or kingdom. Cool. If only. Going back to as early as 2016, I started discussing our approach to developing CoE, which entailed breaking up such a large game into smaller, isolated pre-alpha experiences we could then combine to create the final game known as Chronicles of Elyia. One such pre-alpha experience, Kingdoms of Elyia, was the experience scheduled for us to implement, test, and play the domain settlement and land management mechanics of CoE. As a side benefit, we intended to allow players to experience those mechanics at an earlier point in Elyria's timeline, enabling them to take part in and witness some of the key historical moments of Elyria's recent history. So in 2016, he was saying that Kingdoms of Elyria would exist. We're now in 2023, and Kingdoms of Elyria, one of the first alpha modules, still isn't done. So how far behind are you? Like, I mean, it's incredibly telling. But it's important to understand that KoE isn't just world building. The development of KoE is the development of CoE. All the art assets carry over, all the design decisions and data carry over, all the back-end engineering and gameplay mechanics carry over, etc. I'm not a game developer, so I don't know how easy it is, because they're building KoE in Unity. But Chronicles of Elyria was built for however many years it was in Unreal Engine. So I don't know what the crossover between those two things are, and if building KoE like slots into the building of CoE. I've had people tell me like it is possible. I've had people tell me it is possible but is incredibly stupid to do, and I've had people tell me it isn't really feasible at all. So take that with a grain of salt. Game devs are going to argue this one in the comment section probably, but if you are interested in that, obviously read those comments. I just can't really have massive opinions on it. It does seem to not make a ton of sense. If you've already been using this tech stack for a long time, why would you just randomly swap to another one? Because they only started making KoE in like 2020, 2021. I can't remember what year it was. So it might have even been early 2022. The timeline's so fuzzy. It's been so fucking long. So it doesn't really make any sense to swap to that if you already have all this stuff in another engine, but what do I know? When we say we're working on KoE, it's just a shorthand way of saying we're working on the domain settlement and land management mechanics of CoE, which is being made available to an audience that likes colony sims and grand strategy games before integrating those things into the MMORPG. I don't believe you personally, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this does come to fruition. Maybe, you know, this is actually really good and people are going to really enjoy KoE. I doubt it, but there we go. Q3, which is when we discussed in length the blog post State of Elyria Q3 update, was primarily focused on integrating the adventuring mechanics of CoE into KoE in an intuitive way. While players won't have direct control over crafting stations, tools, techniques in KoE, those things must exist nonetheless, and KoE must use them. Likewise, while world interaction is a significant part of CoE's core gameplay loop, and characters certainly need to interact with the world around them in KoE, the camera's perspective is different. Yeah, it's a top-down management game instead of a third-person MMO, and the level of abstraction must be higher. As expected, these changes in point of view required us to iterate on our intended designs for CoE. He's still using we, so I guess there's multiple people still. We'll find out, I guess. As an example, what is the process for cutting an apple off a tree in KoE? Who gives a fuck? Nobody cares. We'll skip that one. Having summarised the early part of 2022 at a high level, I now want to address the most significant event of Q4. This is the legal, right? This is the lawsuit, and I'd love to hear him speak on this. While I won't spend time speculating on their motivations or intended outcomes, as that is not what these blog posts are about, the plaintiff in the dismissed lawsuit against Sublime Studios appealed their case to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The immediate consequence of that is us being forced to eat what will likely be another $50,000 in legal fees, and should the appellate court overturn the lower court's decision, uncertainty about our future and our ability to continue developing CoE. So I'm wrong then, I guess. The lawsuit is still technically going on because it's being appealed. I said at the very beginning, like when I got told that this lawsuit was happening, that I have no hope for it whatsoever. Not a lawyer, obviously, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but to me it just didn't make a ton of sense. When you back a Kickstarter, unless you can prove the guy actually committed crime and it was a scam and it was fraudulent. I don't think it's illegal to just take in money and then be shit at your job and just try really hard but fail. We know provably they had employees. We know provably they were working on the game. They were just really, really bad at it. So with it being a civil matter, you know, it's a bit of a circus as it is, but I never really had any hopes for this whatsoever, especially because if somebody's company is bankrupt, their personal assets, as far as I'm aware, are not, you know, up for grabs. They're not liable because it's a company, the entity that is bankrupt. What are you going to get back from them? But at the same time, I wanted the lawsuit to get far enough so there was some form of discovery and forensic accounting on the Chronicles of Elyia project, just so we could see what happened. You know, it's a big mystery, one that I've been following for years. I have my own opinions on it from what I've seen, but I'd love to know, like, where the money was spent, how it vanished so quickly, and specifically what were the big decisions that contributed to this, just for my own, you know, interest's sake. Not that I think it would really amount to anything legally. So that said, we're still confident in the magistrate's recommendation in the US District Court's ruling and believe the appeal at court will come to the same conclusion. Yeah, we'll see. The second and more immediate effect the appeal had was causing us to lose our last full-time designer and long-term member of the Soulbound team, Snipe Hunter. So it is just Caspian now. It's literally a one-man band. Snipe Hunter had become a good friend of mine over the years, and he knew the stress I was under to pay his wages as well as pay for the ongoing lawsuit. If you're wondering where the money came from, by the way, PPP loans, I don't know how this is legal. Again, not an accusation, but when COVID started, the US government put in the payment protection plan loans, which were essentially, they existed to guarantee the employment of your company, right? So if you could prove that you had 10 employees and you paid this amount of money for the payroll for 6 months or a year, however long it was, I don't know what the time frame was, the government would give you that money as a loan. And I think they even forgave the loans, so you didn't even have to pay them back. And you could do this twice, as far as I'm aware. So it was obviously intended that you keep these people employed, and the government pays their salary for however long it takes for the lockdowns and stuff like that to end. COE, Soulbound Studios, Jeremy, took 2 PPP loans for hundreds of thousands of dollars and fired all of their employees before the money arrived. So I don't know how I don't know legally, like, if that's right or not, but there's a lot of fuckery going on with the PPP loans across the entire country. So maybe this is just under the radar and nobody cares. Maybe I'm missing something and this is totally fine. But that's how they were paying for, you know, continued development and maybe even legal fees. I have no idea. And then they said they were also personally funding it, but there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that came in from these loans that was used, that were for employees' salaries, and then they fired everybody and shuttered the studio, which is what he said. So it was primarily this drive to keep him employed in the face of open-ended costs that motivated me to step away from day-to-day engineering and pursue a more immediate residual income. So when the case was appealed, he did me a solid and quit so that I would not be forced to continue supporting him. This sounds kind of like he's his child or something. What do you mean he's an employee? I won't lie, Snipe Hunter's leaving is bittersweet. On one hand, I lost an ally, a trusted friend and a colleague to help shoulder the burden of developing KOE and COE. On the other hand, contractor fees were still the studio's most significant costs, and as I already mentioned, the main reason I was working to bring in a revenue stream. With our last full-time designer gone, I no longer need to spend my time pursuing outside income to continue to fund the studio. This gives me the ability to rededicate my focus entirely to the engineering and design of KOE. How is this man spinning being alone to develop an entire MMORPG? He had 20 employees for like 7 years. Or so, I don't know how long, 5 years, 6 years, I don't know how long it was, I can't remember. It's between 5 and 7 years, whatever. He had 20 employees, and nobody played the game, ever. But now, it's actually a good thing I had to fire the one other person working on the game, because now I'll definitely build an entire MMO on my own. This is great, fantastic news. PR is it's just nonsense, isn't it? It's just nonsense. How are you going to spin this as if it's a good thing? You don't even have to be of moderate level intelligence to read this and be like, you're just talking shit, aren't you? You're just talking straight shit. So where does that leave us at the end of 2022? With one full-time engineering designer, me, a small number of on-demand contractors to work on asset creation as necessary, the asset store, a design for KOE that is, best guess, 75% complete. He also told us, by the way, Chronicles of Elyia was like so close to being done that it was like a few months away or something like that. He kept saying the MMO is so close to being done. But obviously, with the way that development works on a project like this, if something's really close to being done, is that a beta then? Like, usually you have an alpha, which is the point where people could play the game. It would work, and you could play it, and there'd be stuff to do. All the bones would be there, and there was just a bunch of polishing, some features, some things to work on still. And then there'd be the beta, and it'd be mostly done. It was just like little bits of and pieces left to do, and then there'd be the full release of the game. So if you're saying it's almost done, why has there never been an alpha or a beta? Why has nobody ever played this? It makes no sense whatsoever. But apparently KOE is also 75% complete, and engineering for KOE that is around 50% complete, and an upcoming court case in the 9th District Court of Appeals. If you stop reading here, you'd be reasonable in thinking that 2022 was hard on us, and we're in a bad place, but the past doesn't define us, it prepares us. Why? It's just you, mate. It's just you. I'm even surprised he's writing. To be honest, because of the appeal, he has to keep this going, right? I wouldn't be surprised if there was no appeal, that he just came out and said, fucking, we're done, guys. It just couldn't do it, could I? Just got no money. As everybody knows, it's just common sense. It feels like this is like, it's just show, right? It's just puppet theatre. Looking forward. Up until mid-2016, I handled all of Chronicles of Elyria's design and technical design, narrative design, world building, and overall direction. I designed everything from the rate at which characters learn new skills to writing the mythology and the mythos of the world. If you learned about COE through one of my design journals from 2015 through early 2017, then you know what COE looks like for me, because it only exists in my brain. But shortly after 2016 began, I moved over to developing our product roadmap, and then I began working on the playable demo for PAX East 2016. Then it was on to working on our Kickstarter, then it was on to adding Exola support to our website, then it was on to hiring a team, and then it just kept going. There was no getting around it. While my role was game director, I oversaw and approved most of the design, art, and engineering choices being made. My job was CEO. As such, I found it extraordinarily challenging to do much beyond running the business. Fucking fantastic job you did there, mate. Fantastic job you did there. No outside investment. Went bankrupt. Fired all your employees. Closed the studio. Making a different game. All that said, with Soulbound Studios now back to being a studio of one, I once again found myself driving the game's technical design and engineering. I'm optimistic that the transition will be readily apparent. To achieve this, I've set aside all external work on fundraising, and I'm now focused 100% on development of KOE and COE. With me back in engineering, that means new features and functionality are finally being added regularly. So, wait, Snipe Hunter was someone worth keeping on and paying for these last couple of years, and he was really good, and he was a good friend, and he was worth supporting, in your own words. But now you're saying, oh, everything's gonna be way better now that Snipe Hunter's gone, and I'm doing everything on my own. Like, it seems a little bit of a shocking indictment of your mate there, but fair enough. They're finally being added regularly. It just seems like he's just talking shit. That means forward progress towards Alpha 2, and with that, more gameplay videos and updates to the public. While the quarterly updates were great at reducing the amount of time we had to spend on updates, the prolonged periods of silence have made it seem like no development was happening. That was worsened by the fact that, well, no engineering was happening. With only the design making forward progress, the quarterly updates were notably empty. I said it, they were all nothing burgers. But with engineering in full swing again, the forward progress will give us plenty of game design to talk about and more things to show off in terms of gameplay. So from now until the launch of KOE, I will be releasing current updates on the second Tuesday of every month. The next update will be Tuesday, February 13th. Oh, that's a point. Somebody actually DM'd me about this. So apparently Caspian had a Discord running, and there was obviously channels for people to post in and talk about the project and stuff like that. And he just closed them all. Like, he just closed all the channels. And somebody posted, he forgot to close one. So there was nowhere to talk. And he forgot to close one, and somebody posted, and he was like, oh, I'm just, just fixing the Discord permissions and changing the stuff around. It just randomly just closed all the channels, deleted everything. Which, is he deleting it so people can't, check into the history of what he said or something? It's weird. It's just a weird thing to be doing in context. Maybe it's completely reading into it too much and there's nothing there, but I don't know. I look at everything related to this and things that this guy does with a little bit of a magnifying glass, because obviously what's happened. Speaking of the next update, my first task, having returned to engineering and retaking over the design of KOE, has been getting a sense of what is left and what our actual progress is. Keep in mind, I've been semi-away for the last 6+ months. Didn't tell anyone that though, of course. Presented it as if everything was fine. I began the analysis last week and was hoping to have that ready by the release of this developer blog, but I didn't quite make it. Surprise. So the developer blog in February will contain our most transparent look to date at what percentage of design and engineering is complete for KOE, with a feature-by-feature breakdown. Along with that, there will be a developer roadmap of the intended order of the remaining work will be completed in. So I guess we're waiting for that. It's not super far away now. We're already in February as this is recorded. Having a public roadmap and a breakdown of the work that has been done and the work that is still outstanding is great, but let's be honest, it's not enough. Their roadmap that was fucked. They never followed it. Like, they had a 4-part roadmap, and they were like, oh, this will be done in this quarter, this will be done in this quarter, etc., etc. And by quarter 3, like half of the first quarter roadmap was still incomplete. So didn't really work out all too well anyway. With Soulbound Studios having fewer human resources and with 2022 a bust, I need to do more to ensure we're making forward traction on KOE. One of my next tasks after completing the analysis will be looking at what assets, game data and features we can push out later to ensure we can start the beta test by this fall and can ship the game by the end of the year. This is for KOE, not for COE. As you'll notice, that's not mentioned yet again during this future progress update. As a one-man team, it's going to be difficult to achieve all that was initially planned for the launch of KOE settlements. To help reset expectations, I will convert some things into stretch goals rather than strict shipping requirements. This will likely include the number of biomes at launch, some of the planned game mechanics, and some natural resource patterns. Nobody cares. We know nothing about this. Nobody likes reading about having to move things from planned to stretch goals, but it's necessary to be realistic about our current circumstance. I should also state, even things that get moved into stretch goals or do not make it into the initial release of KOE aren't permanent cuts. We'll continue to add patches to KOE settlements post-launch as we make progress towards the KOE domains release. I'm fucking sleep. As a final topic, before we end this blog post, I wanted to thank all that have been patiently waiting for the second alpha test for KOE, and with its opportunity to test and provide feedback on the domain. Fucking stop saying that term. I've read this sentence about 1 million times at this point. With me returning to engineering and helming the technical design again, getting to Alpha 2 as soon as possible will be my highest priority. In addition to the design and engineering work on the game, there are a few more things that need to happen before Alpha 2 begins. First, I've migrated my development environment entirely to Linux and free open source tools. This was done both to reduce development costs as well as to make it easier for me to do the server-side work I have been doing. Thought he'd not been doing it, but fair enough. The side effect to that is that I now need a launcher for KOE that works not just on Windows but on Linux as well. This makes sense since Unity is a cross-platform engine anyway. So KOE's Alpha 2 will receive a new launcher and will be available on Linux and Windows. Cool. Second, before unlocking access to early access forums on the website, I'll be making some new website updates. Because Alpha 2 is open to a larger audience, I anticipate a growing number of players who will be messaging us to regain access to their accounts. It's going to be a waterfall. It's going to be a fucking flood of people coming in. Oh man, I've been waiting for Kingdoms of Elyia forever. Definitely. With the limited amount of information we hold on the website, it can sometimes be difficult to authenticate the owner. To address that, the studio is going to be requiring members to provide additional account information to ensure that ownership is clear. And because we will hold more personal identifiable information encrypted, we'll also be integrating two-factor authentication. Finally, Soulbound Studios will be launching a new KOE Alpha Discord server that uses authentication from the website to grant backers access. This will enable alpha testers to communicate over Discord, once again with each other in an environment that is closed off to the public. Got to make sure nobody can see what's going on, unless they gave you money. That's it for the Q4 update. We ended 2022 in a rut. We're beginning 2023 with a surge of new energy. We love that royal we again. A return to more frequent updated forward progress and a plan for how we're going to get to where we are now, to where we want to be at the end of 2023. The most important thing I want people to take away from this is that while 2022 sucked, and 2021 sucked, and 2020 sucked, and 2019 sucked, and we used all our money and have no employees, I won't let us be defined by it. It has prepared us for 2023. This'll be the one. It's starting strong. We will be shipping Kingdoms of Elyria settlements this year. Heard that one before. Pledge to the continued development of Soulbound Engine and the Chronicles of Elyria Caspian. So there we go. None all too wiser as to what's going on, I guess. Another promise. We will have the game. Not the one people wanted. We're fucking... I don't know. I still get people message me or like post comments like, oh, you know, it's still definitely going to come out and I have faith. And at this point, if that's the case, I don't really know what to tell you. I'd love it to come out. I just think it's completely unrealistic. Like, I think if you look at the scale of what the game was supposed to be, and then you tell me that one man's going to finish the entire development when 20 people couldn't, it's just beggars belief. It sounds too good to be true because it just is. And maybe Kingdoms of Elyria comes out and it's amazing and they sell it on Steam and people buy it and then they use that money to like hire people and then they finish Chronicles of Elyria. But I think by this point it's already like 5 years too late, to be honest. And I don't believe him when he says that Chronicles of Elyria was so close to being done. It just logically doesn't make any sense to me, because if it was that close, you could have just got more money from your audience or from investors. There are people out there that would have given you money if you just said, we're almost bankrupt, guys. Here's the product. Here's the alpha. It's a bit rough, but it's proof that we have a game, and people would have continued funding you. You didn't, so I can't believe that you actually have a game. Again, open dialogue here with Caspian. If you do want to prove me wrong, if you want to prove everybody wrong, show that you have a product, boot up a test server of Chronicles of Elyria. We'll do it live on my stream or offline and I'll record it or whatever. And you can show me all the game that you have. You can let me log on, show that there's multiplayer aspects to it and that the networking works, etc. And very, very easy to do. Take you an hour out of your day. You've got tons of time now, you've said. So, yeah, there we go. Thank you very much for watching as always. See you next time. Peace out.